Hello crafty friends and welcome back to my channel. In today's video we are creating a very clean and simple card design with just the right touch of sparkle. The star of our show is that bold die cut sentiment paired with a fun stenciled background. Here's a closer look at the card that we'll be creating today. I used the simple star stencil and the showboat thank you die from the new Happy Campers release by Simon System. Well, let's get started. If you haven't had a chance to check out the new Happy Campus release yet, I will have a link to all the featured products in the description box below. This collection includes some really fun and versatile items, including stamps, dies, stencils, and so much more. Well, let us take a look at the products that I'll be using for our card today. The first one here is this beautiful Showboat Thank You die. This elegant set includes a bold thank you sentiment in all caps font along with a coordinating shadow die. It's perfect for your thank you cards, gift tags, or layered projects. For today's card, I'll be using just the sentiment to create a very clean and striking focal point. For the background, I'll be working with the CZ Designs Simple Star Stencil. This stencil features a repeating pattern of small stars arranged in alternating rows of 6 and 5, giving it a perfectly balanced and modern look. We'll be doing some soft ink blending, and to add a bit of sparkle, we will finish it off with a sparkly stencil paste for that extra texture and shine. For today's color palette, I have chosen a fresh mix of greens and teals, some of my absolute favorites when I want a calming yet vibrant background. I'll be using the Simon Says Positively Saturated inks in the shade Ocean, Surf, Perfection, and Limelicious. These inks blend beautifully, and I really love how the color families are designed as trios. It makes gradient blending super simple. I'm starting off by placing my A2 size card panel onto my glass mat. Now, this glass mat is by Glassboard Studios, which is actually a magnetic one. Now, this is super helpful when I'm ink blending or even when I'm using stencils. The magnets hold everything in place so that I can focus on blending without worrying about anything shifting around. I'm starting by blending ink across the entire panel. On the left half, I'll be working with the greens, beginning with Limelicious, which is the light citrusy green, and deepening it with the darker tones as I move outward. On the opposite side, I'll shift into the teals using Surf and Ocean, and I absolutely love the ink blend between these inks. One thing I always appreciate when I'm working with projects like this is that how easy the Glassboard Studios makes everything look. Especially after all this messy work, cleanup is an absolute breeze. After all that ink blending, a quick mist of water and a soft microfiber cloth is all it takes to get the surface clean. No staining, no fuss. Now, when I'm ink blending, I like to build my color slowly, starting with the lightest shades near the center of the panel and gradually moving out to the darker tones at the edges. This gives the background a beautiful depth and soft glow towards the center. It's the simple technique, but it does make a big impact. Now, if you're someone who enjoys ink blending and loves adding smooth gradient effect to your cardstocks or backgrounds, I highly recommend these positively saturated ink trios. Since each set includes a light, medium, and dark version of the same color family, it makes it so much more easier to achieve that seamless transition. Plus, the inks are super juicy and blend effortlessly even on regular smooth cardstock. Once my ink blended panel was ready, I moved it over to my ultra sticky mat for the next step. Now, you might be wondering why I'm switching from the magnetic glass mat to the sticky mat at this point. And well, there's actually a couple of reasons for that. Just like the magnetic mat, the ultra sticky mat helps keep your stencil and cardstock in place, making sure nothing moves around while you're ink blending. But unlike the magnets, here I don't have to worry about repositioning them constantly to get into those tighter spaces of the stencil. This is especially helpful when I'm doing detailed blending or adding texture paste to the same ink blended area. The sticky surface holds everything down evenly, edge to edge, giving me full access to the entire stencil design without any obstruction. So now I'm going to start ink blending through the stencil using the same set of colors we used on our background, greens and teals from the positively saturated ink line. The goal here is to deepen these shades right where the stars are. I'll focus on the dark greens and teals directly over the star shapes, which will help them really pop against that soft gradient background we created earlier. Once I'm done with the ink blending, I'm actually going to keep the stencil in place because we are going to add another layer, this time with a bit of shimmer and texture. I'll be using the fairy dust stencil paste from Lawn Fawn, which has a beautiful sparkly finish that catches the light just perfect. Now, before applying the paste, though there's one important step, make sure to thoroughly clean your stencil after the ink blending process. This is super important because if there's still ink on your stencil, it could mix into your paste and contaminate the entire container. I just give it a quick wipe with a damp cloth or rinse it under water if I'm not planning on layering. And then moving on, I will add my stencil paste or any kind of texture paste that I need to add on this stenciled background. Now, if you're someone who likes washing your stencil before applying the stencil paste, make sure it's absolutely clean and dry, and then you can go ahead and apply your paste, layering it directly onto the inked stars for that beautiful sparkly effect that really elevates the entire card design. To apply the stencil paste, I like using a palette knife. It gives me great control and allows me to spread the paste evenly over the stencil. But honestly, you can use whatever tool you're comfortable with. It could either be a dedicated stencil paste applicator, and even something like an old gift card or maybe an old credit card to give a smooth, clean application. Now, I'm using the Fairy Dust Stencil Paste by Lawn Fawn, and I absolutely love this product. It dries completely clear but leaves behind the most gorgeous iridescent shimmer, which really makes the colors underneath shine through. When layered over our ink blended stars, this paste adds just the right touch of sparkle to make them stand out without overpowering the background. Once I'm happy with the coverage and the amount of paste on each of those little stars, I carefully scrape out any excess paste back into the jar, making sure there's no ink contamination. Now comes the delicate part, removing the stencil. I lift it slowly and carefully, and you'll see that ultra sticky mat holds the cardstock panel in place. Nothing shifts or smudges, which is exactly what we want after putting in all that ink blending and all of that detailed work. Next, I will set the panel aside to dry completely. It is really important to let it air dry fully to avoid smearing the paste or dulling its shine. While our background panel is drying, let's move on to the sentiment. For this card, I'll be using the Showboat Thank You Word and Shadow die. I absolutely love having a good stash of sentiment dies, especially thank yous and birthday ones. And these beautiful scripty dies are some of my favorites to keep on hand. The size of this particular die is just perfect. It's bold enough to stand alone as a focal point, which is exactly how we will be using it on our card today. I die cut both the word and shadow using plain white cardstock. You could definitely use colored cardstock if you prefer, but I wanted to match the ink blended background, so I opted for a white so I could customize the color myself with ink. I decided to keep the shadow layer white for a nice crisp contrast and then added color to the delicate script thank you word. I started with the deeper teal at the bottom and blended it into the vibrant green at top, carefully merging the two shades for a smooth, beautiful transition. Since the scripty font is quite fine and delicate, I placed it on my ultra sticky mat while blending. That sticky surface holds it down really well, preventing it from shifting or tearing as I apply the ink. Honestly, that's one of my favorite things that I love about this mat is that it makes working with these tiny intricate die cuts so much more easier, especially when you're doing detailed ink blending like this. Once I finished ink blending the sentiment, I wanted to add just a little extra something to make it stand out even more. So I reached out for my Spectrum Noir glitter brush pen and gently brushed it over the ink blended thank you die cut. Now, this adds a beautiful touch of shimmer that catches the light without being too overpowering, just the right amount of sparkle to elevate the look. I gave it a few moments to dry fully, and then it was time to assemble the sentiment. I adhered the glittered word dye directly onto the white shadow piece using liquid glue. It's actually quite easy to align these two layers. The script fits snugly into the shadow layer, and with a little patience, you can get the perfect results every time. To help with the process, I used my reverse tweezers to hold the delicate word die in place while applying the glue. This gives you a steadier grip and helps avoid any accidental bending or tearing of those fine little details. Here's a closer look at our beautifully ink blended sentiment, which also serves as the focal point of our card today. I just love how all of it came together. The colors, the shimmer, and the clean design really makes it pop. Now that our background and the sentiment, which is also the main focal point of our card, is all ready, it's time to assemble the card. I started by positioning the ink blended sentiment right in the center of the background panel. I adhered it at a slight diagonal angle using foam tape to give it some dimension and make it stand out beautifully. Then, using liquid glue, I attached the entire panel to the top folding A2 size white card base to complete the card. And well, that's it. This is such a clean and simple design, but it makes such a big impact. It's also super easy to recreate or mass produce, whether you're trying out different color combinations or swapping in various stencils from your stash or creating cards for basically any occasion. This could be a thank you card, birthday card, thinking of you, or even a sympathy card. I especially love the tone on tone stenciling. It's subtle, elegant, and always delivers stunning results in a very little time and with very little effort. And that wraps up today's card. I hope you enjoyed watching this clean and simple design come to life with soft ink blending, a touch of sparkle, and a bold sentiment that really ties it all together. All the supplies that I used here will be listed down in the description box below. Please note that all of these links are affiliate links. So if you shop using one of my links, I get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hello, crafty friends, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll be making not just one, but four completely different projects, all using the same stamp set. I'm excited to share four of my favorite techniques for working with background stamps, and I can't wait to show you how versatile they can be. Well, before we dive in, I would really appreciate if you could take a moment to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon so that you get notified every time I post a new video. Let's start by taking a closer look at the background stamp that I'll be using for today's card project. This is the Delicate Blossom stamp set by Simon Says Stamp, part of the fun new Happy Camper release. Now, I absolutely love the stamp set, and if you've seen my earlier videos, you might remember that this beautiful frame I created with it. That really shows how versatile the set is with endless possibilities and different designs. Now, along with that stunning 6 by 6 inch floral background, this also includes a bunch of beautiful, almost artistic sentiments. And well, there are coordinating dies available to cut out each of those sentiments, and I'll be sure to link them down in the description box below. Now, since I planned on creating four card projects, I started by trimming a piece of white cardstock into four panels. Now, each of these measures 4 by 5 and quarter, perfect for your standard A2 size card base. For all of the cards that we will be creating today, the first step will be exactly the same, stamping that gorgeous 6 by 6 inch floral background onto our white cardstock panels. I started with one panel and placed it onto my Altenew stamp wheel, aligning it right in the center of that ultra sticky mat. This way, the stamp hangs off all four edges, ensuring none of those beautiful floral designs get cut off. Now, since I'll be using a mix of alcohol markers, ink blending, and some fun sprays on these florals, I decided to heat emboss the image. I stamped it with my VersaFine Onyx Black ink, which is a rich pigment ink that isn't alcohol friendly and can smudge during ink blending. by adding embossing powder on top of that VersaFine Onyx black ink and heat setting it. The lines are sealed in, letting me add color freely without worrying about any of those smears or smudges. Now, before stamping, I did prep my cardstock with an anti-static powder tool so that the embossing powder sticks only to the stamped image. I can then stamp my image. Well, I did stamp this design twice to ensure a crisp, bold impression. Once I was done stamping, I carefully removed this panel from the ultra sticky mat. I used my Simon's Stamp Clear embossing powder. You could also opt for black embossing powder over the black ink, which I think would give the design extra shine and bold effect. Now, since the entire panel is covered with that gorgeous floral pattern, I used my reverse tweezers to hold one edge where there was no stamping. Then I generously sprinkled the embossing powder over the entire surface, making sure every stamped line was coated. After that, I tapped off the excess and funneled it back into the container and got ready to heat set this gorgeous image. Now, because we are heat embossing a full panel, the entire panel, it's very important to let your heat gun fully warm up before bringing it to the cardstock. While heating, keep the heat gun moving instead of holding it in one spot. This prevents the powder from over melting and also helps your panel from warping too much. Now, since this is a really big background, make sure that all of that gorgeous embossing powder is fully melted. You can tilt the panel under the light to check the hazy, grainy look will transform into a smooth, shiny finish as it heats up. That's your sign that the powder has completely melted and set into your paper. I prefer using a heavier weight cardstock when heat embossing a full background like this one, as it holds up better to the heat. Now, if your panel does warp, you can run it through your die cutting machine sandwiched between the plates or simply place it under a stack of heavy books to flatten it out. Off camera, I repeated the same process for all four panels we cut out at the start of the video. And I just love how beautifully they turned out. In fact, if you know someone who enjoys coloring, this set of four would be a perfect gift for them. You could easily create multiples of these stamped and heat embossed panels and gift them to anyone who loves coloring or even ink blending. Just like with any mass production card making process, I like to batch produce one element at a time. In this case, that was the stamped and heat embossed backgrounds. Now it's time to bring these panels to life by adding color and vibrancy. Let's jump into card number one, where we will be ink blending some gorgeous pinks and oranges onto our first panel. For this blend, I'm using cantaloupe, blush, carnation, and watermelon. Well, this is one of my all time favorite color combinations. I absolutely love pinks and oranges, and I have created so many different projects using this particular combination. Now, I placed my panel onto my Glassboard Studios magnetic glass mat, which is hands down my favorite surface for ink blending. The magnets hold everything in place. Also, cleaning up is such a breeze. I started with blush in the center of the panel, then moved to cantaloupe for the orange tones. I think blush is one of my favorite colors in all of the Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated ink collection that I have. I absolutely love that transition and that smooth texture. It's more of an orange transitioning towards the pink. Well, I love the smooth transition between the blush and the cantaloupe. And to add more depth around the edges, I bought in another shade of orange, which is sherbet. Once I was happy with the top half, I flipped the panel to work on the pinks. Before starting, I cleaned off any of that leftover ink from my glass mat to avoid contaminating the pinks. I began with carnation just below the blush area, then blended in watermelon. To deepen the pinks even more, I finished with a darker shade, that is sweets. This embossed resist technique is one of my absolute favorites and it's perfect for mass producing in all sorts of color combinations. Just like the pinks and oranges we used here, you could try an ombre effect by blending the same colors in varying intensity for a soft gradient or go bold with a full rainbow palette. I'm so happy with how this panel turned out. Those shiny black florals really pop against the vibrant ink blended background. Tell me in the comments below what's your favorite color combination for ink blending. Moving on to panel number 2, I was still feeling inspired by that pink and orange combo, so I reached for my Tim Holtz Distress Spritz Spray. Wow, that's definitely a tongue twister. Now, these sprays, I have two shades here. I have Spice Marmalade and Picked Raspberry. These sprays have a beautiful mix of pearlized pigments in a clear fluid base, which is perfect for porous surfaces like paper, canvas, and even wood. You can pair them with other distressed products for rich color and shine, but today I decided to keep it simple yet super shiny by spraying them directly over my heat embossed background. Now, before spraying, make sure to shake the bottles well as the pigments tend to settle at the bottom. For a nice even mist of shimmer, spray from a slight distance. I placed my panel inside my splatter box to avoid getting ink all over my surface, then started with that gorgeous pink. Once I layered that pink over parts of the panel, I then applied the spice marmalade. I alternated between the pinks and the oranges until I was happy with the look on the panel. The colors here may not be as bold and vibrant as your regular distress sprays, but I absolutely love the soft luminous shine they added to my background. The best thing about using sprays on your projects is that there's really no right or wrong way of doing it. Sure, it can get a bit messy, but the results are always so worth it. I don't just love sprays for my backgrounds like these, they are also amazing when you use them with your stencils. You've probably seen me use my silver shimmer sprays too, adding that extra sparkle and shine to my card projects. Now, here's a side by side comparison of the pink and oranges while we ink blend and using these spritz sprays. You'll notice I used the same color combinations on both these panels but ended up with two completely different looks. While I let that panel dry, let's move on to panel number 3. Now for this one, we are doing some partial coloring, picking out just a few flowers from the floral background and coloring them all in a single hue. I'll be using my Ohuhu alcohol markers, but you could use colored pencils or even watercolors. If you choose watercolors, make sure to stamp and heat emboss your watercolor paper to protect the background. In the previous video where I created a frame using this gorgeous background stamp, I used pinks and oranges to watercolor the flowers and the result was absolutely stunning. This time I wanted to try something different, a vibrant blue, which isn't a color I usually reach out for when it comes to florals. I'm working with two shades here. I have a darker shade for the depth on the petals and the lighter one just for brightness. I wasn't too focused on shading or light direction or any technique here. I was just having fun experimenting with this gorgeous blue on my flowers. And honestly, I love how striking this blue looks on the flowers. It's inspired me to step away from my usual pinks and reds and try something less traditional colors when it comes to these beautiful floral projects. Please note that I colored a few of the flowers and left the rest of the image untouched. We are skipping coloring the leaves, flower centers, and remaining blooms. This partial coloring techniques creates a stunning visual contrast that I hadn't tried before, and I absolutely love how it turned out. There's also something about the combination of the blue and that bright, vibrant, shiny black that makes this panel look absolutely striking. Of course, you could choose to add multiple colors to your flowers if you'd like, but here I wanted to keep it simple with a monochromatic look. This is again a design you could absolutely mass produce in a bunch of different colors. You could color in your flowers reds, oranges, pinks, yellows, or even greens. Well, yes, not the petals, but you could color just the leaves as well. That would be a totally different look. Moving on to the final card front, we are doing partial coloring again, but this time we will mask off one part of the panel and color the other. Now I'm using the grids on my mat here just to make sure that my washi tape is completely aligned and in straight line, and I get a perfect division on this panel. I'm using my Ohuhu alcohol markers, and well, I bought back my traditional reds for the flowers, which I find absolutely stunning. Keep in mind, I'm coloring every bit of this section, not just the petals, leaves, and the flower centers, but also the negative spaces in the background. I fill the background with a very light shade of purple. Just like with the blue flowers, I used two different shades of reds and greens for my flowers and leaves. For the flower centers, I stuck with a single shade of yellow, and for the background, I have that light purple. Again, I was not too focused on any perfect techniques. I was just having fun with my colors. That's why I mentioned earlier in the video that this stamped and heat embossed background would make a perfect gift for anyone who loves coloring. We don't have any fancy techniques or methods here. It's just plain coloring, one or two shades of colors of your choice, but the point here is absolutely enjoying the process. You could definitely color the entire panel without any separation, but just like the previous panel where we partially colored those blue flowers, this technique was also new for me, masking off half the panel and coloring the other half. I was really excited to give this a try. After finishing the coloring, I carefully peeled away the washi tape and just look at how stunning it turned out. I love the bold, vibrant colors contrasted against the crisp black and white side of the panel. And with that, we've completed all four panels. I absolutely love how beautiful and unique each one turned out. We used the same exact stamp set and heat embossed the image on every panel, yet managed to create four completely different card fronts. Off camera, I went ahead and stamped my sentiments again from the Delicate Blossom stamp set and assembled all of the cards. In less than an hour, I ended up with four absolutely stunning finished cards that look so different from one another. For the last card, where we have the partially colored background, I added a strip of black cardstock to separate the colored section from the black and white part before placing my sentiment and adhered that panel onto that gorgeous gray cardstock. For all of these cards, you'll see I kept the sentiment super simple and elegant and just let the background shine. I didn't add any sequin mix or splatters here. I just wanted my background to be the focus of my card. Now, for this card, I created a little square sentiment which says with thanks. Now, Simon Says stamp does have coordinating dies for each of these sentiments, but I feel that a little circle or a sentiment strip would look absolutely gorgeous against that busy background. Now, here's the card where we use the sprit spray. Just take a look at that absolutely gorgeous shine. I'm pretty sure this is not really showing off on camera, but in reality, it looks absolutely stunning. And I'm not sure if this is my favorite of all the front four cards that we created today, but take a look at that beautiful blended background. And I used a partial die cut circle. And with the sentiment so happy for you, you could also add some sequin mixes on all of these card projects. But well, I will just let my background shine, and I absolutely love how these turned out. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this video inspired you to try new techniques with your background stamps and see how versatile a single stamp set can be. Whether you're into bold colors, soft blends, or partial coloring, there's so many fun ways you could mix things up. If you enjoyed watching today's video, please give it a thumbs up. I will have all the products listed down in the description box below. Please note that all of those links will be affiliate links, and if you shop using one of my links, I get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hello, crafty friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm sharing an interactive edge to edge shake card with a very clean and simple twist. Think bright pops of color, plenty of sparkle, yet a minimal and elegant card front. Well, before we dive in, I would really appreciate if you could take a moment to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon so that you get notified every time I post a new video. Let's take a quick look at the products that I'll be using for today's card. Now, I have the Layered Autumn Leaves stamp set by Cat Scrappiness, one of their older releases, but still one of my absolute favorites whenever I'm working on any fall themed or Thanksgiving card projects. My original plan was to simply stamp the leaves and die cut them using the coordinating dies, but for my first Thanksgiving project of the year, I wanted to try something different, so instead I decided to make a shaker card. Now, the set includes two layers of each of those images, a base layer and the detail layer that adds those beautiful, intricate accents. But for today's card project, I'll skip the stamps altogether and we will be using only the dies to create our shaker window. To start off, I have two A2 size white cardstock panels. The first one will serve as the window layer and the second will be the base of our edge to edge shaker pocket. For the window panel, I'm arranging several of those die cut leaves across the surface of my card panel. Now, I'm not being very precise with the placement here. Instead, I'm scattering them randomly with a couple even overhanging the edges. That's actually part of the charm of this edge to edge shaker design. Now, once the dies are positioned in place, I ran the panel through my Spellbinder's Platinum 6 die cutting machine. Now, I will set aside all of the leaves that are cut out from this white cardstock panel, and well, they'll be perfect for another project. For today, I will keep the main panel with this lovely leaf-shaped windows for our card today. For this technique, it's important to make sure that both panels align perfectly and are exactly the same size, especially since two of those leaves extend past the edge of the window panel. With the front panel ready, it's time to now work on the background that will sit inside our shaker pocket. We are going to do some beautiful ink blending in rich fall tones. We have warm shades of orange, brown, reds, and greens. Now, whenever I'm ink blending, I like to work on my Glassboard Studios magnetic glass mat, especially for projects like these where I'm using multiple colors that'll go off the edge of the panel. The glass surface makes blending smoother and cleanup is a breeze. Just a quick spritz of water and a wipe with a microfiber cloth does the trick. And well, there are magnets included, which are perfect for holding your panel in place if you're working with ink blending and stenciling, or well, even with pastes and other texture material. Well, I started with oranges and pinks on my panel. Just as we scattered the leaf dyes randomly on our first panel, I'm ink blending color randomly across the background, not aiming for perfection, but for a beautifully organic blended look. I periodically place the window panel over it to make sure color peeks through every die cut opening on my first panel. The blending might look a bit splotchy at this stage, but don't worry, once it's paired with that intricate die cut window panel, the end result will be absolutely gorgeous. If you want to add lots of dimension to your shaker card, the key to make sure is that none of those die cut openings extend too far towards the edge of your cardstock panel. You'll need a solid border where you can place your foam tape without it showing through the leaf windows. Now that we are wrapping up with this beautiful ink blended background, I'm absolutely loving how the colors turned out. This design, well intended to create a Thanksgiving card, would also work perfectly for a festive birthday card too. With all those vibrant shades, it almost feels like a burst of confetti or even a cheerful balloon filled backdrop. I'll take one last look with my front window panel in place just to be sure there's enough color concentrated behind each of those openings before moving on to my shaker pocket. Now, to create my shaker pocket, I'm using a plastic sleeve, the kind that I normally use to store my finished cards in. Now, I'll cut it apart to make two separate sheets, which will be enough for two shaker cuts. Well, if you want, you could also place this entire background assembly right inside the plastic sleeve to create your shaker pockets. I place my background panel over one of those plastic sheets with the ink blended side facing down towards the plastic. Next, I apply double-sided tape along the two longer edges of the panel. After removing the backing, I fold the plastic over and seal both the long sides. Once those are secure, I add tape to both the shorter sides, but I will seal only one of them for now. Now, whenever I'm working with plastic, I like using double sided tape instead of a liquid glue because that I feel gives more strong hold as compared to the liquid glue, which might ooze out or give a more messy finish to your card front. Now, once I have adhered tape to the shorter sides and sealed one of those shorter sides, this is the stage where we have an open pocket ready for our sequin mix. Now, I'll keep the backing on the final short side of the tape in place until I've filled the pocket with all those tiny sparkly shaker bits. For the shaker pocket, I'm using a mix of gold and brown glitters, the perfect pairing for our Thanksgiving theme. Now, my mix includes brilliant gold heart sequins, platinum gold glitter sequins, and espresso glitter sequins, all by Cat Scrappiness. Once I'm happy with the amount of sparkle inside my pocket, I remove the adhesive backing from the double sided tape on the remaining side and we can seal this pocket completely. With that, our edge to edge shaker window is ready. I like to trim away any excess plastic hanging over the edges so that the card has a very clean and polished finish. Next, I'll place my window panel over this beautiful shaker background. I love the colors and the sparkle and the shine. Well, yet once you keep the window panel, you see that the overall design still feels very clean and simple. Now, before adhering the front panel onto the shaker background, I'll stamp my sentiment directly onto this window panel. For the sentiment, I'm using the Have a Happy Thanksgiving sentiment from the Autumn Lantern add on set by Cat Scrappiness. The set includes several autumn and Thanksgiving themed images, but today I'm focusing solely on the sentiment from that set. I placed my window panel into my Altenew stamp wheel and I used the grid transparency sheet to perfectly align the sentiment in one of the open spaces on the panel. Then I stamped it using VersaFine Onyx Black ink for a crisp, bold impression. Now that all of the elements are ready, we have the clean and simple die cut window with the stamped sentiment and the gorgeous ink blended shaker pockets filled with those sparkly bits. It's time to assemble everything into a beautiful card front. I began by adhering the window panel onto the shaker pocket. Here I'm using liquid glue instead of a double-sided tape. This will allow a little wiggle room for perfect alignment before I finally commit to adhering the panel onto my shaker pocket. Once I was happy with the placement, I used liquid glue again to attach this entire assembly onto a top folding card base. Well, I have to admit, before adhering the shaker assembly onto the card base, I had a bit of fun playing with the shaker. It was so satisfying to watch how those colorful bits inside the pocket contrasted beautifully with the ink blended background showing through the leaf windows. And with that, our very clean and simple, interactive, edge to edge Thanksgiving shaker card is complete. I love how vibrant the ink blended background peeks through all those beautiful die cut leaves, and the sparkly shaker bits add just the right amount of fun and dimension. This card manages to be festive and colorful, yet very clean and simple. Well, all the supplies that I used to create this card project will be listed down in the description box below. Please note that all of those links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I'll get a small commission at no cost to you guys. I hope you enjoyed creating this with me and feel inspired to try your own shaker cards with a fall twist. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hello, crafty friends, and welcome back to my channel. As the leaves fall and we say farewell to the warm summer, it's time to embrace those spooky vibes. Today, I'm creating an adorable but creepy voodoo doll card, just right for Halloween. It's bold, messy, and full of sparkle, complete with glittery spider webs that set the perfect haunted backdrop. Let us take a look at the products that we'll be using today. Now, here are some fun products by Cat Scrappiness. All of these were part of last year's Halloween release. Let's start with this 3 by 4 inch stamp set. It's called Stick It To Me. It's perfect for the spooky season, featuring an adorable voodoo doll along with a bold sentiment. The coordinating dies are a great bonus. They cut out not only the voodoo doll but also the sentiment. You can even draw inspiration from the colors shown on the packaging when coloring your doll. For my background, I'll be working with two stencils. I have the jack-o'-lantern faces stencil and the spiderwebs stencils. Again, both of these are by Cat Scrappiness. Instead of covering the whole entire background, I will be selectively using parts of each of these stencils to add texture, interest, and extra character to our haunted scene. Let's go ahead and start with the background first. Now I'm working with a panel that measures 4 by 5 1/4 inches, which is slightly smaller than a standard A2 size note card. For the background, we will be doing some playful ink blending. My surface of choice is my glass mat from Glassboard Studios. This has become my go-to base because it makes the process of this ink blending so much more smoother. It allows the ink to glide beautifully, and also cleaning is super easy, which is perfect when I'm working with so many different colors and creating a background that's meant to be messy and full of energy. Now, talking about the colors, I pulled out a gorgeous combination of bright oranges, purples, blues, and pinks. You'll notice that the ink blending isn't going to be seamless or perfectly smooth. That's completely intentional here. Instead, I wanted those colors to feel patchy and scattered across the panel. That creates movement, depth, and that slightly chaotic vibe works so well for our Halloween theme. Think of it as almost a stormy sky, but with more vibrancy and an absolutely whimsical look. To push that spooky feel even further, I'll be adding in some earthy browns to ground the colors and give it a slightly aged look. And of course, no haunted background would be complete without touches of intense black around the edges. The black really frames the panel and adds that dramatic shadowy effect that makes the bright colors pop even more. By the time we are done, this panel is going to be a perfect balance of bold, vibrant energy with just the right amount of dark and eerie atmosphere to set the stage for our Halloween design. To clean my glass mat, I simply give it a quick spritz of water and wipe it down with a microfiber cloth. It's that easy. That's the reason I love using this glass mat whenever I'm ink blending, or even better, whenever I have such intense colors. Now let's move on to the stenciling part of it, which will add some really fun details to our background. I'm starting with a spiderweb stencil. To keep it steady, I like using the little pawn magnets to hold the stencil in place while I ink blend through it. Using the same intense black ink, I added the spider webs in random spots across the panel. I didn't cover the whole stencil, just applied ink selectively so the webs appear in three different areas, giving the background a scattered look and a spooky feel. Once I was satisfied with my spider webs, next I brought in the jack-o'-lantern faces stencil. Using the same approach, I ink blended through just few parts of the stencils. So those little eerie little faces, they peek out through different spots. This layering of webs and faces really helps build the haunted Halloween atmosphere. If you'd like to give your background even more dimension, you could swap out the stenciled webs for die-cut spider webs and layer them directly onto the panel. With all of the stenciling finished, it was now time to bring in some texture. For this, I chose the Fairy Dust Stencil Paste by Lawn Fawn. This paste is super sparkly. It dries almost clear but leaves behind that gorgeous shimmer that really catches the light. I paired it with a spiderweb stencil to add that extra sparkle onto our background. I wasn't too concerned about perfectly covering the stencil. Instead, I applied the paste randomly, just like I did my stenciling across the panel. The goal here is to achieve a rough, rugged texture that enhances that eerie, haunted vibe of the background rather than keeping it neat and precise. You could use any gels or pastes that you have in your stash, and it would turn out absolutely amazing. I'll carefully lift the stencil off the panel and take it straight to the sink to wash away all of that stencil paste. It's important to not let the paste dry on the stencil, palette knife, or even your glass mat since it can be tough to remove it once it sets. With that gorgeous sparkle and texture added, our background is now complete. I'll set it aside to dry and move on to creating our focal point image and the sentiment for our card. I'm going to start working on the focal point image and the sentiment for this card. For this, I have a piece of smooth white cardstock and I'll start by stamping both the little voodoo doll as well as the coordinating sentiment onto a white piece of cardstock. This stamp set is the Stick It To Me stamp, and I absolutely love how bold and quirky the designs are. They are just perfect for a spooky card like this. For stamping, I'm using my VersaFine Onyx Black ink. Now, this is a pigment ink, which means it'll sit on the surface of the paper for a little longer compared to most of the dye inks, making it perfect for techniques like heat embossing. It really allows the embossing powder to stick well before we heat set it. To make sure that I get a solid impression, I stamp the image twice. I always prefer double stamping it when I know I'll be embossing it because it ensures the lines are crisp, clean, and bold. Next, I sprinkled on black embossing powder. I personally prefer using black powder over clear embossing powder on black ink because it gives such a dramatic effect. The lines look shinier, deeper, and more vibrant, which makes the stamped image pop beautifully against the background. When it's time to heat setting, I always let my heat tool warm up for a good few seconds before bringing it to the cardstock. This little step makes a huge difference. It melts the embossing powder almost instantly, and that quick melt lessens the exposure to heat, which helps prevent the paper from warping. Once the embossing was finished, I set the panel aside for about a minute or so to cool down completely. This is really important because if you start coloring too quickly while the embossing powder is still warm, you might run the risk of smudging or dulling that beautiful glossy shine. Giving it a little time to cool ensures the embossed lines stay sharp and act as perfect barriers for coloring later on. In that time, I will pick up my colors, and here I'm using my Ohuhu alcohol markers to add in those beautiful vibrant colors to our voodoo doll. Now that the image is embossed and ready, it's time to bring this voodoo doll to life with some fun colors. Now, since I wanted to keep things spooky yet playful, I decided to go with shades of bright green for the doll's body. To add more depth and glow, I bought in some neon greens for my highlights and shading. Earlier in the video, I mentioned taking inspiration from the packaging artwork, and while that version leans more rustic and muted, I chose to really lean into the vibrancy. I felt that those bold electric greens would match perfectly with that chaotic, messy, and colorful background that we created earlier. For the little details, I kept things simple but striking. The stitched heart on the doll was colored in bright, vivid red, which instantly stands out against that green body. For the button, I reached out for a vibrant purple. It not only complements the green but also ties it in nicely with the pinks and purples that peek through the background. These pops of colors are small, but they add just the right amount of contrast to make the doll feel fun, creepy, and a little mischievous. Well, unlike the background where I went with quick and splotchy blending, I really slowed down for the doll. I wanted the colors here to look smooth and seamless, so I worked in layers. Starting with the darkest shade of green, I gradually moved towards the midtones and then the light shades, blending them together as I went. I went back and forth between the markers, revisiting areas to soften harsh transitions. The goal was to avoid any crisp, dark lines and instead achieve that smooth gradient that makes the doll look more dimensional. For the pins that are stuck on the dolls, I used the same bright red that I used for the heart, which keeps the color palette cohesive while still giving those tiny details a punch of color and boldness. When it comes to coloring with alcohol markers, I usually reach out for my Ohuhu alcohol markers. They have such a wide range of beautiful, vibrant shades that work beautifully for images like these. However, when I got down to those really tiny elements, the eyes and the button details and the pins, I switched to my Spectrum Noir Tri Blend markers. Their fine tip makes it so much more easier to get in those tiny little spaces without bleeding over the embossed lines. By the time I was done, the voodoo doll had a perfect mix of spooky charm and playful vibrancy. The greens gave it a creepy glow, while the pops of red and purple tied it back to that fun, chaotic Halloween palette background that we created for our card. Once the coloring was complete, it was time to die cut these pieces. I used the coordinating dies to cut out both the voodoo doll and the sentiment. To give them more dimension, I also cut each of those images two additional times using white cardstock. Stacking these layers adds extra depth and stability to the pieces. While you could also use foam tape for dimension, I find that multiple cardstock layers give it a more sturdier feel, especially for your card front. I adhered the layers using my Barely Art glue, or you could also use any of your favorite liquid glue. This is perfect because it allows a little wiggle room before everything sets firmly. Now, with that, we have our focal point image and the sentiment and the background, everything ready. I started planning the card assembly. Now, as I positioned the doll and the sentiment onto the panel, I realized that the background could use a bit more color and energy. To fix that, I reached out for my delusion sprays, specifically a very bright cherry red and a vibrant pink. I applied them randomly across the panel, not worrying about the fine mist or perfect coverage. Some areas have larger droplets, creating a natural splotchy effect. I absolutely love this randomness. The scattered splotches give the background that extra spooky charm and visual interest. I let this panel sit for a minute or two to dry. Unlike the stencil paste, these sprays dry relatively quickly, so it doesn't take a long time before you can move on to assembling your card. By adding these extra layers of color, the background feels more bold, messy, and perfectly matches the playful, eerie vibe of the voodoo doll. Now it's time to assemble our card. I began by attaching the background panel to a top folding white A2 size card base. To give the panel a nice lift and add some dimension, I mounted it using foam tape that really helps the card feel more dynamic and gives that lovely pop to this super spooky background. Next, I added my focal point image, which is the voodoo doll, and the sentiment using liquid glue. Now, when working with textured backgrounds like this one, it's important to be extra careful. Make sure to give the image a little extra time to settle onto the panel so it bonds properly with that textured areas. For added security, you could even place something slightly heavy on top of the images. You could use your stamp block or even keep a couple of books while the glue sets to ensure they adhere fully and stay perfectly in place. With all those steps taken care of, the card comes together beautifully, combining a vibrant, messy background with a fun dimensional focal point that really stands out. And there you have it, a spooky, fun, and vibrant Halloween card. From a messy, colorful background to a dimensional voodoo doll and a bold sentiment, every element comes together to create a card full of personality and charm. I hope this inspires you to experiment with ink blending, stenciling, and layering to make your own playful and eerie designs. All the supplies that I used to create this card project will be listed down in the description box below. Please note that all of these links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hello, crafty friends, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am really excited to share some fun tips and tricks on how you can get most out of your coordinating sets. I'll be showing you how to use them in different ways, whether you want to mass produce a batch of cards or create completely unique designs that look nothing alike. For today's projects, I'll be working with some amazing new products from the latest Catherine Polar release in collaboration with Sizzix. Specifically, I'll be focusing on the Happy Garden stencil and embossing folder combo set. Now, if you love floral designs, this set is definitely worth adding to your collection. The amazing embossing folder creates an intricate floral pattern that adds gorgeous depth and dimension to your card fronts, while the coordinating layering stencil perfectly enhances those embossed details. In this video, I'll be sharing techniques to use these two sets together for a cohesive look, as well as creative ways to use them individually. Speaking of florals, I also recommend checking out the Whimsy Blooms stamp and die set combo from this new release. I even created a project where I paired the die cut florals with the Happy Garden embossing folder, and they worked beautifully together. Moving on to technique number one, we will start with just the embossing folder. I began by placing an A2 size panel inside the embossing folder, running it through my Sizzix Big Shot die cutting machine. Now, I did add a sheet of printer paper as a shim to get a deeper impression, but well, that's not actually required. Just take a look at how gorgeous that intricate floral design is. It's absolutely stunning. I used plain white cardstock here because I plan to do some ink blending, but this would look just as beautiful on colored cardstocks as well. For the first technique, I'm keeping it really simple with some absolutely simple ink blending. I went with one of my all-time favorite color combinations. We have pinks and oranges with just a touch of yellow in one corner. This technique is perfect for mass producing in different color palettes. You could go for rainbow effect, create an ombre look using the light, medium, and dark shades of the same color palette, or even add color randomly for a more artistic or well messy look. No matter which option you choose, the result will always be a beautifully ink blended background that highlights the stunning intricate floral design from that absolutely gorgeous embossing folder. I'd love to hear from you. Drop your favorite color combinations in the comments below. I can't wait to try some of them out myself. Now, coming back to our panel, I did go back and forth with my ink blending brush to make sure that the transition between the colors was smooth and seamless with no harsh lines showing through. I absolutely love how this panel turned out, but of course, I had to add a touch of sparkle. Once the ink blending was done, I placed the panel into my splatter box and sprayed it with shimmer spray. You'll notice a soft mist along with some larger droplets from the spray bottle, but well, I actually love that slightly messy effect. It gives the panel a more natural and organic feel while making the colors underneath really pop. Now, here's a closer look at the finished panel. Isn't it absolutely gorgeous? While the shimmer spray dries, we will move on to our second technique, which features the Happy Garden stencil on its own. Now, this stencil is actually a four-layer design with each layer adding more detail to create a beautiful floral background you see here on the packaging. Now, although the stencils are numbered 1 through 4, you can really start with any layer and build up your design from there. For this, I'm using my Sizzix stencil and stamp platform. I find it works perfectly with the Sizzix layering stencils thanks to those guide holes on the stencils that line up with the platform guides. Plus, the sticky mat on the stamp platform keeps the cardstock in place so that your panel does not shift while you work through each layer of those stencils. I began by placing my panel under the stencil opening and pressing it onto the sticky surface of my stamp platform. making sure to align the stencil holes with the platform guides. Layer 1 features the leaves along with a few floral details. For this layer, I chose a mix of different shades of greens. As I worked through each stencil, I switched between my larger and smaller blending brushes, but honestly, the choice is yours. You can use whatever tools you feel comfortable with. If you'd like, you can even mask off those floral areas and only add colors to the green color to your leaves. Personally, I decided to stick with one color per stencil layer. It keeps the process a lot more simple and is especially handy if you're mass producing this design. You can either repeat the same color palette or switch things up with different shades for the flowers and the centers. Well, for my flowers, I used the same color scheme as we did for the previous panel. I have the pinks, oranges, and yellows. I also added some shading by blending lighter and darker tones together, which really creates depth and dimension in the design. Each time I peel back a stencil, I'm amazed at how beautifully this panel is coming together. The contrast between the yellow and the green especially looks absolutely stunning. You'll really see the gorgeous details shine after stencil number 3, where the flower petals and the centers start to come to life. Then stencil number 4 adds finishing touches, details on the leaves, stems, and even some decorative dots to fill in the background. For this layer, I went with a darker shade of green so that it would stand out against the lighter greens already on the leaves. Since the areas on stencil number 4 are more intricate, I switched to my mini ink blending brush to get into those tiny little spaces with precision. Once I finished ink blending through the stencil, I wiped off the excess green using a damp microfiber cloth. I made sure to clean the stencil carefully, taking care not to smudge any of that ink on my panel. Before removing the stencil, I wanted to add a bit of sparkle, similar to the shimmer mist on our first panel. But this time I'm using a stencil paste. Using a palette knife, I carefully apply the paste to all the small dots on the flowers. If you'd like, you could also add the paste to the other details from the stencil number 4 for an even more extra sparkle and shine. After applying the paste, I cleaned both my stencil and the palette knife with warm soapy water to prevent the paste from setting in. Finally, I peeled off the panel of the stamp platform, and here's a look at this absolutely vibrant, colorful card background. Isn't it beautiful? I'll set this panel aside and let the stencil paste dry while we move on to our next technique, which combines both the embossing folder and the stencil. Keep in mind that these are coordinating sets, meaning that the pattern created by the embossing folder lines up perfectly with the stencil. The openings in the stencil fit like puzzle pieces over the raised areas of that embossed panel, making it easy to layer them together seamlessly. I started with a white embossed panel just like we did in technique number 1. This time, instead of ink blending directly onto the panel, I placed it back into my stamp platform along with the coordinating stencil, which fits perfectly over the raised areas of the embossed design. Now, for this project, I decided to try a monochromatic look using various shades of brown to color in the panel. I began with one layer and the leaves and the few floral details, and for each of the stencil layers, I chose a different shade of brown to create a subtle contrast while keeping the overall design cohesive. I have to admit, I was a bit hesitant at first about using the browns on this background, but well, I wasn't sure if the brown flowers would really work. But I'm genuinely amazed at how beautiful this turned out. This is another design that you could easily mass produce in a variety of different color combinations or even other monochromatic designs. And just like that, we have our 3 panels ready. One created with just the embossing folder, the second one using only the stencil, and the third combining both the techniques. Each background looks completely unique, so you can choose your favorite method and even mass produce them in a variety of different color combinations. Once my backgrounds were ready, off camera, I went ahead and prepared some sentiment strips and circles. For all the cards, I decided to make them as happy birthday cards using the happy birthday sentiment from the Up and Away stamp set from one of the previous Catherine Pooler releases. For card number one, I have this little sentiment circle. Before adding it to the panel, I decided to add a touch of gold. I used a thin gold thread and wrapped it around the panel three times. This not only anchors the sentiment circle but also adds a bit of sparkle and texture to this already beautiful background. For the sentiment circle, I used thinner foam adhesives to give it a subtle lift. I cut the circle using the border party circles die, which is also part of this new release. This set includes six beautifully etched circles, each with an intricate design that adds texture and visual interest to your cards. This is the up and away stamp set that I used for all of my sentiments. It includes three phases. We have happy birthday, thinking of you, and congratulations. I absolutely love the delicate font on these sentiments. Now, I also have created videos showing the stamp set along with the coordinating dies. I'll leave links to those in the description box below. For this card, I placed the birthday sentiment circle in the lower left hand quadrant. This placement allows the sentiment to stand out while still keeping the focus on that beautifully ink blended background. And that's a wrap on card number one. Be sure to share in the comments below which color combinations you would love to see or want me to try on this floral background. Moving on to card number two, which features a panel we created using just the stencil. I absolutely love how vibrant and colorful this panel turned out. For this card, I opted for a smaller, more subtle sentiment. I stamped Happy Birthday on black cardstock and heat embossed it on white. Using foam tape, I lifted the sentiment slightly off the panel, which keeps the focus on that beautiful background rather than the sentiment itself. Finally, I adhered the panel directly onto an A2 size card base using liquid glue. Cards 1 and 2 were fully set with shine and sparkle, but card number 3, the monochromatic brown card, has a clean and simple look. To add a touch of sparkle, I incorporated a thin strip of brown glitter cardstock from Your Paper Insider. I trimmed the panel to leave about half an inch border on the right hand side. For my sentiment, I stamped the same happy birthday phrase on white cardstock using dark brown ink, then added the matching strip of glitter cardstock along the bottom of the sentiment to keep the design cohesive. That's a wrap on all the cards that we created today. We explored three different techniques using the embossing folder, one using the stencil alone, and then we have a combination of both to create three completely unique card designs. I'd love to hear from you which one of these card designs is your favorite. Let me know in the comments below. I can't wait to see which one you'd choose. I hope this inspires you to try these techniques in your own projects, whether with supplies that you already have on hand or with these exact products from the new Catherine Polar release. Well, all the supplies that I used for these cards will be listed down in the description box below. Please know that all of the links there are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I'll get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hello, crafty friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm switching things up a bit from my usual card making and creating a fun circular card. Now, this one here is super quick, sparkly, and perfect for mass producing. Plus, it makes such a beautiful design for Thanksgiving. So let's jump right in and start crafting this gorgeous card together. For this card, I'll be using the Give Thanks word and wreath die as my main focal point. Now, just like any other card design, you could easily swap in your own favorite focal point image and sentiments. But I chose this particular die because of its circular shape that works so beautifully for this style and adds a little twist to what I usually create. Now, this design also fits perfectly onto your standard A2 size card base, so I feel it's really versatile. And while the give thanks sentiment is perfect for Thanksgiving, it can just as easily be used all around the year. Now, since I was really excited for the fall season and the cozy vibes that came with it, I decided to lean into Thanksgiving theme instead of making a generic thank you card. For this project, I also will be using some fun pattern papers from Your Paper Insider along with a basic circle nesting die and a standard A2 size card base. I'm starting by cutting my focal point image from the stunning pattern paper by Your Paper Insider. It's a gorgeous copper metallic cardstock, and I just love the shine it gives. Now, since this paper is a bit more delicate than your regular cardstock, I'm being extra careful as I remove the die to avoid any tearing that could ruin the design. To get those tiny little pieces out from between the die cut, the best tool to use is that little pokey or pointy tool. All you need to do is gently press through the release holes on the die, making sure that each piece pops out cleanly without damaging the paper. This part of the video is sped up for you, but in real time, it did take me quite a while to carefully remove everything and ensure that my die cut came out perfectly. Just look at that gorgeous, intricate detail on this die cut piece. It's absolutely stunning. Well, you could even place it on a standard A2 size card base where it would fit beautifully while still leaving enough margin to add extra details if you'd like. Now, since this die cut itself is quite delicate, I decided to give it more stability by adding an extra layer of cardstock. And instead of going with a plain white cardstock, I chose brown craft cardstock. Not only does it provide sturdiness and dimension, but it will also create a lovely shadow effect behind the focal point image. The craft cardstock was a lot thicker, so I didn't need to be quite as delicate when removing it from the die. Once both the layers were ready, I adhered them together using liquid glue. Well, you could also use spray adhesive, but for intricate die cuts like these, I find liquid glue works best. It gives you a little wiggle room to perfectly align the layers before they set in place. I love using my Barely Art liquid glue. The fine tip makes it perfect for intricate die cuts like this, since it dispenses just the right amount of glue without any mess. After adhering the two layers together, I carefully align them so that they sat perfectly on top of each other. Well, now, if I was making a regular thank you card, I might have chosen brighter colors like yellows and greens to contrast with that metallic cardstock. But since this is a Thanksgiving card, I wanted to lean into warm, cozy tones, but with a bit of a contrast. So I pulled out this gorgeous navy cardstock from, again, Your Paper Insider and used a circle die that is slightly larger than my focal point to cut out the base. This deep navy layer will really ground the design and make the intricate metallic die cut stand out beautifully. Before adhering the focal point image to the base, I wanted to add a little extra contrast. I'm using the Simon's Stamp Positively Saturated ink in the shade Galaxy, which is a deep, rich blue, to blend around the edges of that circle base. Of course, you can skip this step and use the die cut directly on the plain cardstock, but I feel that touch of inking really makes the focal point piece pop. And if you know me, you know I can't resist adding some shine and sparkle. So after I was done with all of that beautiful ink blending, I placed the circle base into my splatter box and gave it a light mist. Well, I wouldn't say light, I went with heavy hand, a mist of shimmer spray for that beautiful glimmering finish. You'll notice that the circle panel curls up a little after being misted, but don't worry, that's completely normal. Once it dries, you can flatten it by placing it under a stack of books, or you can adhere it directly onto the card base to smoothen out that curl. Now, I'll let this shimmer spray dry, and while that's drying, let's move on to the card base. I'm using a standard A2 size side folding card base, and with the same circle die that I used to cut the navy panel, I'm going to cut out our card shape. The key here is to position the die slightly above the scored edge of the card front, leaving a small gap at the top. After running it through the die cutting machine, you'll end up with a circular shaped card that has a flat edge along the top fold. Now, technically, the card base isn't a perfect circle because of that straight edge, but that's where our navy circle panel comes in, and it'll cover the line beautifully and give an illusion of a fully round card. For my card base, I used a 110-pound white cardstock. Now, since this circular base is smaller than your standard A2 size card base, it does leave you with less room to write a personal message inside. But honestly, I think it's such a refreshing change from the usual cards that I make, so I'm not very worried about the space left for my personal message. Now that all our components are ready, the circular card base, the navy background, and the focal point die cut image, it's time to put everything together. Using liquid glue, I first adhered the Give Thanks die cut onto the navy panel. You could also use spray adhesive instead, since this layered up piece is sturdier than a single delicate die cut piece. I just love the way the metallic design contrasts against that deep navy blue color on the background. I like to use my reverse tweezers to pick up the focal point image and then place it directly onto the navy blue background. Once that piece was in place, I glued the entire assembly onto our circular card base, carefully aligning the edges so that none of the white cardstock shows through. Isn't it just absolutely gorgeous? The metallic cardstock paired with that soft shimmer spray on the background has me completely in love with this design. Now, since I wanted to switch things up from my usual card making style, I realized it had also been a while since I used any sequins on my cards. So, to add extra sparkle, I bought in the platinum gold glitter sequin mix by Cat Scrappiness and scattered them randomly across the card front before calling it finished. I adhere the sequins in place using liquid glue. Well, you could also use your Nuvo drops or stickers if you'd prefer. But I really love the shine from these glitter sequences, and well, they also pair so beautifully with all the sparkle that's already on the card front. And with that, our circular Thanksgiving card is complete. From the metallic focal point and the navy background to all that extra shimmer and sparkle. I love how this design adds a fresh twist to my usual card making style, and I hope it inspires you to try something a little different too. All the supplies that I used to create this project will be listed down in the description box below. Please note that all of these links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I'll get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hello, crafty friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm really excited to share a brand new product with you, the Candy Kids Rotating Stencil by Sizzix. Now, if you love creating layered backgrounds but don't want to juggle with multiple stencils, this is such a fun option. I honestly didn't plan on making more than one card, but the process was so enjoyable and the results turned out to be so beautiful that I just had to create another. Sizzix has released 4 rotating stencil designs, all with such playful and creative patterns, so definitely check them out on their website. I've got 2 stencils with me today. On the left is the Candy Kid stencil, which we'll be using for our video today. And on the right is the Flower Power stencil, that gorgeous floral design. Well, I haven't made a video using the Flower Power stencil yet, but I do have a blog post where I share a card I created using it. And well, I'll leave a link to that video blog post down in the description box below. Let me take out the stencil from the packaging so that you can get a better look and better understand the stencil. Well, can you believe that this gorgeous geometric pattern is created with just a single stencil? As the name suggests, these are rotating stencils, so after you ink blend through the openings, you simply rotate the stencil either clockwise or counterclockwise to continue building that beautiful design. What makes it even easier is that each stencil has those tiny holes that line up perfectly with the etched markings on the Sizzix stencil and stamp tool. I'm starting with a piece of white cardstock which I'll place under the stencil. The sticky surface on the stamping platform will hold it securely in place so that it doesn't shift while we apply ink multiple times through the stencil. The tool also comes with a small attachment to help position your stencil, but I personally prefer lining up the stencil holes directly with the notches on the platform. It's quick, easy, and perfectly accurate. To build this geometric pattern, the stencil can be rotated up to 4 times, allowing you to use 4 different ink colors if you'd like. But for today's card, I decided to keep it simple with just 2 shades. I have a beautiful teal and a bright pink. I started by blending the teal ink through all of the openings on my panel. Normally, you would rotate the stencil once, but since I wanted the color to directly appear on the opposite side, I rotated it twice. To make things easier and save some time, I went ahead and used the same teal shade on both sides before moving on to the pink. That way, I didn't need to wipe off the stencil in between the coloring. For an even more contrast, you could use mini ink blending brushes to layer two shades from the same color family. Meaning, instead of sticking with just one teal, you could blend a lighter and a darker tone within each of those openings. This will add gorgeous depth and create an illusion of dimension in your background. Now, since this was the very first time I was experimenting with this stencil, I decided to keep it simple and stick to single shades of colors. Plus, the teal and pink combination was completely new to me, so I was really excited to see how it would turn out. And I have to say, the final result is bright, bold, and wonderfully vibrant. I repeated the same exact technique using the pink shade, but well, before starting using the pink, I made sure to wipe down my stencil to avoid any color contamination. And here's a look at the finished background, so vibrant and absolutely stunning. Now, since this is a geometric pattern, there are endless ways you could use it. You could trim it into a square card, cut sections to use it as your focal elements, or even layer it behind other designs. For today's project, I chose to turn it into a circle window card. To create my circle window, I'm using the Border Party circle dies, which were part of the fun new release by Catherine Polar in collaboration with Sizzix. I really love this set. It comes with six different circles featuring beautiful etched designs. For my card, I'll be using the largest circle to cut out the window. Now, with such a busy background, those etched details don't stand out as much, but they're absolutely gorgeous. Now, if you want to highlight them, you can trace over the etching with your black gel pen or a marker to make them pop. Now, since I was creating a window card, I decided to add a thin trim instead. The easiest way to make a trim or a frame for your window is by using the same large circle die you cut your window with and pair it with the next smaller die or circle die in the set. I cut mine from black cardstock and I just love how striking it looks against that pink and teal background. It really makes the whole design stand out beautifully. Then I use the largest circle to create my window from an acetate sheet. Now, whenever you're die cutting acetate, especially heavyweight acetate like the one I'm using here, you won't get a clean cut as you would with paper or cardstock. Instead, the die will leave a faint etched outline which works perfectly as a guide for trimming the shape with scissors. Now, since mine was a thick acetate, I followed that etched line with scissors to cut out the circle. And because this piece will be adhered behind the frame, it doesn't need to be perfectly precise. To attach the circle acetate to my circle frame, I like using liquid glue. It gives just the wiggle room to adjust before it fully sets in place. The amount of foam tape that you use really depends on how much dimension you want on your shaker window and the type of shaker bits that you're adding. Now, since I'll be using flat sequences, I only added a single layer of foam tape around the edges. Now, one step I always like to do before adding the shaker bits is brushing a little anti-static powder along the inner sides of the foam tape with a flat paintbrush. This helps prevent the sequins from sticking to the tape so they can move around freely inside the window. I filled the window with a mix of blue and pink sequins to complement the background and added a few gold ones for extra sparkle that really pops against that black frame. Then, using liquid glue, I sealed the window. You will notice that there's a little bit of that background peeking through the shaker window, but that's an easy fix. You can just trim it away once the glue has fully dried. You could definitely use the entire panel as your background. Well, I did trim it to create a circle window. You could use the entire background and just add your shaker window on top, but I wanted to introduce some texture to this card. So I decided to add a layer of an embossed panel. I used the new Burst of Bright embossing folder, which also well comes with a stencil. But for this card, I kept the background white and relied solely on that beautiful embossed texture. Now, if you want to see a colorful card that I made using this embossing folder and stencil set, I do have a video for that, where I'll be sure to link it down in the description box below. Now that our background is ready, it's time to attach the shaker window to the center of the panel. Well, first, I trimmed away all that excess that was peeking out. Then, using liquid glue, I adhered the window in place. It might not be super obvious here on camera, but in person, it looks absolutely stunning. The textured background really makes the shaker pop and adds a beautiful dimension. Here's a look at that finished panel. I absolutely love the shaker bits, that beautiful geometric pattern on our window, and well, the textured background. Off camera, I went ahead and completed my card front. I attached this onto an A2 size card base. I chose a bright pink base and paired it with a lovely scripty happy birthday sentiment from the Up and Away stamp set. And that's card number one, a vibrant, colorful, interactive shaker card with so many fun details. For card number two, I kept things much simpler using the same geometric background with two tones of color. This time I kept the colors really subtle and light, unlike the bold pinks and teals from the first card. I intentionally kept the colors light because I wanted to show you that even with a busy background, you can still add beautiful focal points without covering up all that pattern. For this card, I used soft reds and light greens. I trimmed the panel to fit an A2 size card base, and to really make those soft colors stand out, I layered it onto a slightly larger black cardstock before adhering it to my A2 size card base. For the focal points of our card, I decided to use the Bright Butterfly die set, which is another new release from Catherine Puller in collaboration with Sizzix. This set includes four different butterfly designs, complete with etched details that add texture and dimension to the wings. The inner layers really make the butterflies pop and highlight those delicate little details. The set also includes two trails, some hearts, and two dies that cut out the centerpiece of the butterflies. This coordinates perfectly with the Bright Butterflies stamp set. You can cut these butterflies from colorful cardstocks or use white cardstock and add some beautiful ink blending for a custom look. The coordinating stamp set includes fun layers and details that you can stamp. Then use the dies to cut them out and add them onto your card front for that extra dimension and interest. Well, now this part of the video is sped up since this is a technique you've probably seen me do before. I cut out the butterflies using black and white cardstock. For the white inner detail pieces, I added green and red ink, blending it a couple of times to make sure that the color is more vibrant than our background. That helps the butterflies really pop against the busy, colorful panel. Now, once the butterflies were colored, I added foam tape to the edges of all of the wings and then glued the body centers before attaching them to the black base. The foam tape lifts the wings slightly, creating dimension, while the glue holds the bodies securely attached to the black base. I like to use my reverse tweezers to keep the butterflies in place while the glue dries, ensuring that the wings stay popped. After I was happy with the placement of all the wings and how the wings popped, I added the little centers to the butterflies. I then placed them on the card panel, and once I was happy with the final placement, I adhered everything firmly with liquid glue. For my sentiment, I used a thin strip that says thinking of you. This was stamped in using white embossing powder over black cardstock, and the sentiment is from the Up and Away stamp set. To finish the card, I added a bit of sequin mix around the butterflies for some extra sparkle. You'll notice that even though the colors of the butterflies match with the background, they still stand out beautifully. That's because we build up the colors by layering the same ink multiple times, making them brighter and richer. So, if you don't have multiple shades in the same color family, this is a great technique. You can just use one ink pad and simply layer it to achieve deeper and more vibrant look. Once my card front was complete, I adhered it to a top folding A2 size white card base. And well, here's a look at our finished cards. Two completely different card designs, both created using the same exact stencil. And well, that wraps up today's card making session. I hope you enjoyed seeing how one stencil can create two completely different looks, one bright and bold, and other soft and subtle, yet a busy background. It just goes to show how versatile these tools can be and how much fun you can have with them experimenting with color, texture, and dimension. All the supplies that I used for today's video can be found linked in the description box below. Please note that all of these links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I'll get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hello crafty friends and welcome back to my channel. Today we will be unboxing the Simon Says Stamp September 2025 card kit of the month. This is called Birthday Bliss. Well, this is a Stamptember exclusive card kit and I am really loving at how colorful and vibrant all of the products in this card kit are. Now this is more of a birthday themed card kit, so I absolutely love it because I love creating birthday cards. That's the maximum cards that I have in my stash. I love creating birthdays and thank you cards, and I feel this card kit is the contents on this card kit is something that I will be able to use throughout the year. Well, here is an inspiration sheet of some fun designs created by some amazingly talented designers. This is absolutely perfect for your inspirations, and since there are so many products, you might get stuck or maybe have a little difficulty in getting started, but look at these inspiration sheets and you get an idea of what colors can go with the contents of the kit or what products can be coordinated to create a beautiful card front. Well, before I show you the contents of the kit, let's talk a little about Stamptember. Stamptember is a month-long event, a stamping party happening at Simon's Stamp starting 1st of September to the 30th. You'll have some beautiful stamps and lovely products, great deals, exclusive products, which means that once they're released during this month and sold out, they'll be sold out and they won't be restocked. There will be collaborations with many of your favorite brands, surprises, lots of inspiration, and again, there'll be videos, Instagram, blogs. You can visit the simonsystemblog.com for daily updates. You can use the hashtag Stamptember on your Instagram profiles or any of your social media profiles to stay connected with the Simon System family. So don't forget to tune in on September 1st. And well, there is a big block party happening, so don't miss out on that. Moving on to the contents of the kit. First, we have some fun birthday sentiments. Now, this is the reverse birthday easy strip and the birthday easy strip. Now, this is part of the easy strips collection. There is something for thank you, Halloween, we have Christmas easy strips. So, there's a lot of variety of sentiment strips that you can find. We have the black and the white. Now, both of these are printed on toner sheets, which means that you could use your foiling machine and add beautiful foils on these sentiments. Now here we have happy birthday in a couple of different styles. We have I'm extending the celebration. Today we are celebrating you, thinking of you on your, you could pair it with any of these birthdays. I love that you have an option of adding the belated sentiment to your cards because let's be honest, there are some times where we forget wishing our near and dear ones. And well, when it's too late to send a birthday card, you end up sending a belated birthday card. We also have um, sweet wishes on your birthday. It's time to party. You could use them individually or mix and match them to create your own sentiments. Now, Simon's stamp also has the Easy Strips rectangle die, which is a die that cuts out all these sentiments at once. Now, if you're someone like me who is not very good at lining up these sentiments and cutting them out using your paper trimmers, this die is absolutely perfect addition to your crafty stash. Now, like I said, this the Easy Strips sentiments is a collection of variety of different sentiment strips for so many different occasions. So you could pick out any of those, and this would perfectly pair with all your sentiments. Now, it not only cuts out the bigger ones but also the smaller ones. So, in one go, you have all these sentiments ready. You could store them in one of the Simon System storage pouches or in any of maybe even a Ziploc bag. It would be absolutely perfect. I must tell you that this die does not come with a kit. It can be bought separately. I will definitely be sure to leave a link down in the description box below for this die. Moving on, we have some fun, colorful cardstocks here. Now, these are A2 size cardstocks. There are, I think, 19 of them. A fun assortment of colors. We have purples, teals, blues, even black, some fun greens. And then the warmer tones, we have pinks, reds, yellows to the oranges. Now these would be perfect for die cutting, using as your standard A2 size card base, using on your embossing folders, or well, since there are a number of dies included in this kit, I think that would be perfect for those. Now for the best part of the kit are the 4 dies that are included here. Yes, you heard me right. We have 4 dies in this kit. Now, I have been getting the Simon Says card kits for almost 4 years now, and this is the first time ever that I have received so many dies in just one kit. Let me walk you through each one of them. We will start with the party balloons die. Now, this is a set of 2 dies. I like that all of these dies are detapped, so you don't have to take your clippers and try to detab it, in the process showing your fingers. Well, that was a messy process, but this one makes it a lot more easy. The balloon die, there is a big balloon, and this one can be used as a little shadow or a highlight on your balloon, which I feel is perfect. You could cut out using all of those rainbow color cardstocks that were here. You could have some fun oranges, pinks, purples. I think that would make a beautiful party balloon setup or a beautiful focal point. Next, we have the pop and corn die set. Again, we have all the components that will be required to create your popcorn tub and little popcorns as well. Now, this one also comes with a little etched detail. Um, I love dies that gives regard to tiny little details which make your final products look absolutely stunning, dimensional, and have some kind of texture on them. So here we have the base of the popcorn, the circle, and some fun popcorns which you could again cut out using those colored cardstocks. Next we have the rubber ducky, 4 set of dies to cut out each of those little body parts of our rubber ducky. Now you could use the yellow color cardstock in the bundle and the orange for the beak and black for the eyes. You could also use googly eyes for his little eyes. I think that would be perfect as well. Now, this one is my absolute favorite. Well, I must say that as a kid, I have always been scared of the Ferris wheel. Maybe just fear of heights, but I think I must have sat on the Ferris wheel maybe just twice or thrice because of the height. Well, back then we called it the giant wheel. So, well, Ferris wheel also. This one includes the circle die, which creates the main structure and frame of the Ferris wheel, and we have this base of the Ferris wheel, two dies to cut out the carriages, and a little heart which can go on the center of the Ferris wheel. Now, here you could use the carriages, cut them out using the same colored cardstock, or use rainbow colored cardstock. Absolutely your choice, but this would be a very unique card design, I feel. You could also add some interactive features and make this Ferris wheel turn around, or hold it static using some fun foam tape to pop it up. Now, talking about foam tape, this kit also comes with a quarter sheet of the Simon's stamp white adhesive foam strips. This is thin enough to go behind all those delicate, intricate details on your Ferris wheel. Moving on to the embossing folders, we have the birthday sentiments embossing folder. Now, this is a 3D embossing folder. When it comes to 3D embossing folder, I love Simon's Stamps 3D embossing folder. They give an absolutely beautiful etched detail. And well, the font on all these sentiments is absolutely stunning. With the right paper, type of paper, it would give you absolutely beautiful results. Now the cardstocks here are perfect to go inside these embossing folders. Now since these are a lot thicker, these cardstocks are a lot thicker than the ones I would use on the embossing folder, I will make sure I mist the papers just so that the fibers loosen up and the paper does not crack or tear in the process. Next, we have some fun papers included in the kit. Again, just like how colorful the cardstocks have been, these papers are also very retro, movie themed, and it'll take you back in time definitely. Now, here you could cut out these sentiments and you could use the whole panel as is or cut out the sentiments. We have some fun polka dot patterns, arrows. You could cut out these arrows individually and use them on your card fronts, write small little notes or stamp small little words. You can use them in so many different ways. Beautiful polka dots again and rainbow pattern. We have some fun stars and bows. Now this is my absolute favorite color combination, pinks and oranges. I will definitely be using this on one of my card fronts, but I also love this pattern which can be used as just the card front. Now this is one thing I don't like about the double-sided pattern papers is it gets so difficult to choose between which side you want. Now here I love the balloons and I love this, so that will also be a definitely difficult choice. Here you could create small little tags or use this fun beautiful color combination of again pink and oranges. Here this is a very unique design. You could cut out each of those little sentiments and create your own sentiment strip. Like if I'm using the popcorn, I could use like food and drinks, and maybe in the theater, or if I'm using the Ferris wheel, I could use the word rides. There are so many different ways we could use this, or again use this pattern paper as your background. Now here you could cut these out individually, stamp your sentiment, or add some fun details from the card kit, or use this absolutely gorgeous paper. Now this I think will be my favorite pattern among all the patterns. I love the color combination here and those little stars really stand out. Here I have a radiating rainbow design. Again, beautiful, very subtle design on this one. The colors are absolutely gorgeous. And on the other hand, a bright contrast, vibrant colors here. Now this one I feel will give a very retro look to our background. I would use some vintage looking browns to create a vintage retro style movie theme card. Now for this one, I would definitely cut out all these four panels and use them on four different cards. Or how could you miss this fun stripe pattern? Again, we can create four cards using these. We have Shine Bright, You're the Best, Hope Your Day is Poppin', love you a bunch or use this absolutely fabulous design. So those were all the pattern papers included in the kit. Moving on to the stamp set. Now this is the birthday blessed stamp set. This is a Stamptember exclusive. We have a beautiful radiating sun with the center, a smiley face, and a beautiful cloud. Now this is very much my style because it's more of a clean and simple design. I absolutely love the font on these sentiments. We have hope today is full of love, laughter, and sunshine. Birthday wishes, love to you on your birthday. Happy birthday. Here's to a beautiful birthday, and but that hill. Now, this one I feel, since we have the sentiment, could be used as a hill or maybe a river, stream, or a wave. And I think that would pair perfectly with the rubber ducky die as well. Now, Simon's stamp does have coordinating dies for these. It is not included in the kit but can be bought separately. I will definitely be leaving links to all of these products down in the description box below. I'm not sure if the kit is still available, but I will be linking all of the products individually, so along with the coordinating dies, you can check them out. Now, the final thing here is this absolutely gorgeous cardstock. This is the holographic rainbow diagonal cardstock. That diagonal striped rainbow design is absolutely beautiful. Let me know in the comments below, how do you use your holographic cardstocks? Do you create card bases, or do you use them as your sentiment strips or backgrounds? How do you like using your holographic or metallic cardstocks? So that was a look at all the contents in the kit. We have this absolutely stunning cardstock, a beautiful simple design on the stamp set, some fun pattern papers, lots of colorful papers. We have an embossing folder, birthday sentiments embossing folder. We have 4 different die sets, 2 sentiment strips, and some foam strips. I absolutely love this birthday blessed 2025 September 2025 card kit, and this is something I would definitely recommend you adding to your stash. I will be posting videos of cards that I create using contents of this kit and some other contents from, well, outside the kit. Stay tuned for all those videos. All the supplies you see here and some of my favorites as well, including the Easy Strips rectangle die. I will link to all of these down in the description box below. Please note that all of those links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hello crafty friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm sharing a very clean and simple card design that only uses a stamp and some gorgeous inks. I did add a touch of dimension to this one, but this is also perfect if you're looking to create a true single layer card. And the best part, it's super easy to replicate, making it great for mass production. And of course, I couldn't resist adding a little sparkle to finish it off. The stamp I'm working with today is called the Birthday Blitzed stamp set, which comes in the new September card kit from Simon's Stamp. I do have an unboxing video where I show more details about this kit and all the products that are included in the kit. Now, this stamp set includes some really fun little images. We have a sun, a cloud, pretty little flowers, heart accents, and even a striped path that you can use as a hill or transform into maybe a water stream. The sentiment fonts in this set are just gorgeous, very clean and simple, and perfect for creating your birthday cards. I started by placing a 4 by 5 1/4 inch panel, which is slightly smaller than your standard A2 size card base, onto my Altenew stamp wheel. The sticky mat on the stamp wheel holds the panel perfectly in place, making it easy to do multiple layers of stamping. For this card, we will be creating a little scene with that sun, cloud, hill, and some flowers. Each of these elements will be stamped separately using beautiful shades of inks from the Positively Saturated Ink collection by Simon Stamp. Well, I kept the design very clean and simple with no shading or any fancy stamping techniques, making it a great beginner friendly design. And it uses just single shades of colors. I chose to stamp everything onto the panel so I could pop it up on my card base. But if you prefer a true one layer card, you can stamp this directly onto your card base instead. Well, I began by stamping the sun. Now, since it was my first time using these stamps, I made sure to condition them first. You can simply rub your fingers over the stamp, or like I prefer, use a microfiber cloth with a bit of stamp cleaner to remove that extra stickiness, especially on the solid stamps like the center of the sun and the cloud. Now, for the sun rays, I used sherbet ink, which is a gorgeous shade of orange. I kept things very clean and simple here by sticking just to one shade of orange. Of course, if you wanted to add more depth and dimension, you could bring in additional shades of oranges. But since this is meant to be a very beginner friendly design, you really don't need more than just basic sets of ink from your stash. You could also get creative and go abstract. Don't feel limited to using just traditional colors for the sun or clouds. Try different color combinations to give your scene a unique twist. I stamped each element only once without any double stamping. That way, the images have a little texture and a slight imperfection, which I think gives the card a more organic look. After finishing the rays of the sun, I stamped the sun's center with citrine yellow. Now, for my clouds, I placed them in odd numbers around the sun for a more balanced look. The first cloud was stamped right next to the sun using twilight ink, which is a soft and subtle blue shade. I then cleaned the stamp and shifted it to the right and stamped it again slightly lower this time so that both these clouds overlapped. The second cloud hangs off the edge of the panel, which works perfectly. For the third cloud, I stamped it on top of the sun, overlapping the rays of the sun. Finally, I added a little smiley face that comes in the set to the yellow center of the sun. Stamping the smiley with VersaFine Onyx black ink, it was the perfect finishing touch to bring that sun to life. With the sky elements in place, it was time to move on to the hill. The hill stamp was a little too long to fit inside my stamp wheel, so I switched over to my Sizzix stencil and stamp tool. It has an ultra sticky backing that keeps the panel secure while stamping larger images like this abstract hill design along the bottom. For the hill, I used the shade Perfection, which is a beautiful green that I reach out for often when stamping or ink blending leaves, stems, or anything nature inspired. Normally, if I wanted to add depth, I'd paired this Perfection ink with pine for a two-tone effect, but this time I kept it simple and went with just one shade of that green. Now, there was a small gap in the lower right hand corner, so I realigned the stamp and stamped it again with the same ink to continue the hillside seamlessly across the panel. You could certainly leave it as is, but I felt like adding that extra layer of green in that gap gave the hillside a more continuous flow. Another fun option would be to stamp one of those little hearts from the set to fill the space instead. Next, once I was done with the hill, I added three little flowers from the set using watermelon shade, which is a gorgeous pink. For these, I did double stamp to make them pop more against that green background. Please note for all the other images that I've stamped here, it was just single stamping. Even the hills, it was just for these flowers that I used double stamping. This scene isn't your typical freehand artistic landscape scene. It's made up of clean geometric shapes for the sun, clouds, and hills. And honestly, I feel that's the beauty of the stamp set. It creates a simple graphic look that feels fresh and modern. Once the colorful scene was complete, I stamped my sentiment, which reads love to you on your birthday, which comes from that stamp set. It fits perfectly in the open space of the design. To make sure it was aligned just right, I used my grid transparency sheet because at this stage I really didn't want to have any kind of misalignments. I loved how the scene turned out and I didn't want to cover it with a sentiment strip if something went off center. I'm really loving the clean and simple look of this card front. With just single stamping and those bright, cheerful colors, it feels so fresh. You could definitely stamp this design directly onto your card base for a true one layer card, but since I wanted to pop it up, I trimmed the panel down to 4 by 5 and quarter inches, which is slightly smaller than your standard A2 size card base. I added foam tape to the back for dimension, and instead of mounting it on a plain white card base, I chose a light gray card base instead. This adds just the right touch of contrast and frames the colorful scene beautifully. Well, of course, even a clean and simple card deserves a little sparkle. Normally, I'd reach out for my glitter brush pen to add shimmer to the sun and the clouds, but this time I decided to keep them plain and instead added some shine to the flower centers. I used the metallic tones Positively Dazzling Gems by Simon's Stamp and placed them on all three flowers for that perfect finishing touch. Now, before wrapping up, I also wanted to share this handy funnel tray with cap from Cat Scrappiness. It's such a lifesaver for working with small embellishments. You can easily sort them and then pour everything back into the container without spilling the gems all over your desk and floor. Well, that's our card for today. I'm so happy with how the colors turned out. They're bright, cheerful, and really make the design pop. I love how clean and simple it feels, and the best part is that this layout works perfectly as a single layer card. It's easy to replicate, which means it's ideal if you want to mass produce birthday cards or just create a bunch to have on hand. I'd love to hear from you. Would you try this design as a one layer card or add that little extra dimension like I did? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Now, all the supplies that I used to create this card will be listed down in the description box below. Please note that all these links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I'll get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe.